So imagine for a moment, if you will, that you're a game master looking to get into running Rifts. You might have played Rifts before, you might be completely new to the system, but you find the setting intriguing. It's very complicated, very diverse in terms of adventure and character potentials, and the only problem you have is you're a little daunted by the sheer volume of world books available. For instance, this is just the stack of books related to the subject matter of this video. And that's not including the core rulebook or the Game Master's Guide. Well, don't worry, King Waspinator is here to save the day by breaking down the essential books you need to create a completely fleshed out North American setting based around Lone Star and the American Southwest Northern Mexico borderlands. As you can see from this map I put together, the region I'm describing stretches from the east, from the Sabine River, which is the border between Texas and Louisiana and the corner here of Arkansas, all the way across through New Mexico to the easternmost lands of Arizona, as far as Fort Tombstone and Joseph City. There are 6 core world books that you need to have to be able to pull this setting off. The other books described in this video help flesh that out and add more detail and resources, but these books are the essential ones, the ones you need to absolutely have to have. And to start off, we have Rifts Lone Star, obviously, since Texas takes up the bulk of the landmass described on the map there. Next, you want to have Spirit West, World Book 15, somewhat controversial apparently to some people about its depiction of Native Americans. However, I think whatever cons you might have about fantasy Indians are outweighed by the pros of having a science fiction setting that has allowed traditional Native American cultures to regain a large chunk of North America back to themselves. If you feel tepid about it, I guess you can leave the Native Americans out, but they're a significant chunk of the Southwest setting, and so it's a good book to pick up. Next, I would recommend World Book 28, Rifts Arsno. Less so because of its description of the Arsno city-state at the Grand Canyon, and more for the information it has on Fort Tombstone and the army of civilized vampires that operate out of there. And speaking of vampires, you will also want World Book 1, The Vampire Kingdoms, as much for information on vampires as also for setting information for cities such as El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. You would also want to have a copy of Atlantis. Atlantis is fairly close by, and Splugorth Atlantean raiders do typically strike targets all along the Gulf Coast. And the book that ties that all together, the glue that holds it all and helps reset things for a modern game that doesn't have to feel too dragged down by events of Rift's long history of its ongoing storyline, would be World Book 35, Megaverse in Flames, which introduces 2 demon armies that operate within this section of the North American continent, as well as information on the devil forces that control Cuba, and whose devil navy is also a threat to Texas's coastline. If you want to be able to flesh out the basic setting a little bit deeper, right off the bat, picking up World Book 30, Rifts DBs of North America is pretty close to being an essential book in and of itself. This gives you information on all sorts of alien and magical species that populate North America, obviously by the title. Just to help save you a little bit of time, here is a list of the various DBs that operate in Texas and New Mexico and northern Mexico. You have Feni, Tocani, the Bayou Ursine, Idy, Slurmph, Crab Warriors, Loronoids, Larmac, Livork, Simvan, Grackletooth, Orcs, Vernulians, Brutosaurs, Nerettas, Psygoblins, Syax Aliens, Broadkill, Phenodi, Ictec, Cactus People, Man-Eagles, Pogtall Giants, and Squilb. So anyway, the next book I would recommend would be World Book 14, New West. has a variety of character classes and basic technology that are commonplace to the setting for, you know, non-Pecos raiders or for non-coalition allied forces. It also has information on Bandito Arms, which is one of the major black market companies and organizations that operates in the region. And last, out of the basic setting expansion pack, I would recommend World Book 10, The Juicer Uprising, for a couple of different things. It has information on the Arkansas cities of Fort El Dorado and Newtown, and Arkansas has, in the years since this book came out, become a coalition state in its own right, and is thus Texas's nearest neighbor. And so it's not bad to have information on them because they're a close by trading partner and potential source for reinforcements for the Lone Star Coalition forces. It also includes information, detailed information on the city-state of Los Alamos, which used to be Austin, Texas, which is right smack dab in the middle of Lone Star. And it's also a good alternative setting for players to use as a base of operations if you don't want to go with El Paso and you want to focus more on the eastern aspects of what's going on in the setting. It also has a gang called the Grim Reapers that is a death-worshipping cult of juicers that know how to turn juicers into undead, and they worship the apocalypse demon Death, which, as described in Megaverse in Flames, the leader of the demon army that's currently infesting New Mexico is himself actually being slowly transformed into an avatar of the apocalypse demon Death, and so they make it appropriate fill-in for human occultist servitors. If you're not wanting to have to go to the trouble of inventing a bunch of, you know, human cultists who'd be serving these demons on your own, it gives you some ready-made NPCs and a ready-made template for a cult that have just in the years since they've abandoned their holdings in the Magic Zone and have migrated west to come worship death because they've felt the siren call of death or some sort of shit. So you're going to need people for your players to fight and go up against. You need NPC villains, and so a trio of books that'd be good for that would be, starting off, Rift's Mercenaries. There's a couple of mercenary companies that are presented in this book that can be easily lifted and put into the setting. It would not hurt to get a copy of Dimension Book 10, Hades, Pits of Hell, just for the sheer sake of the fact that it's full of stats on all sorts of demonic critters, and also secrets about their native dimension and leadership that you might find handy for building greater campaign arcs. And their counterpart, you want Dimension Book 11, Devil Hell Unleashed. This is not quite going to be as handy as Hades, since the stats for Devils are really only necessary if you're going to be doing anything along the coastline and in the Gulf waters that Texas controls. So next up, we want to delve a little bit deeper into what the Coalition is capable of doing in terms of what sort of technology they have and resources they have on the ground. So first of all, Coalition Navy, Sourcebook 4. It has information about Fort Pinnacle, which is one of the primary Coalition Navy bases, and it's right there at the easternmost tip of the Texas coastline. World Book 11, Coalition War Campaign. Primarily useful just for updated Coalition technology, less so much for information about the Coalition's plans. For a modern day book on the Coalition's plans that are relevant to the setting as it is now, you want to get a copy of Secrets of the Coalition States, Heroes of Humanity, which gives a few new character classes and a lot of information on how the Coalition faces, views, and plans to deal with the demonic threat of the Minion War. But I'm going to give a rundown of a few other books that would be handy to have to tie in. Starting off with the Rift's Black Market Sourcebook. Beyond just having a bunch of extra material on equipment and an overall description on how the black market works, it supplements the information about Bandito Arms from New West with more updated information on their operations and expanded information on their operations. And it also details several sister organizations that operate within the black market, including El Oculta, which has a strong presence along the Texas-Mexico border. World Book for Africa. This is what originally details the apocalypse demons of death, famine, plague, and war. And seeing that the primary Hell Lord over the New Mexico pit, Zugard, is secretly being turned into an avatar of this guy right here on the cover, well, it wouldn't hurt to have a copy of this book for that. And also, just for fun, you could also use the Gathering of Heroes NPCs at the end of this book to maybe have one or two show up as guest stars. Since it's described in Megaverse in Flames that South America has sent some anti-monster forces up to join the fray, if you feel like incorporating that into your Texas campaign, it is quite logical that Fort Pinnacle or maybe Houston might be a port that the Colombian Navy seeks to discharge their anti-monster forces at. And so it would not hurt to have a copy of World Book 7, Rifts Under Seas, and a copy of World Book 6, South America 1. But only in the limited capacity that South America 1 describes the anti-monsters and the modern-day Colombia. If you're going to include orcs, you will want Conversion Book 1. Other than that, there's a few monsters and a couple other fantasy-type races that you can use as DBs, but for the most part, the DBs of North America book and the other books like Splendid Dimensional Market should give you more than enough variety of non-humans to use without having to resort to bringing in characters straight out of Middle-earth. So there you go. Hopefully that'll help if you're a relatively new GM getting into Rifts and you're trying to orient yourself against this sea of world books they have available to try to figure out which ones that you would need to stitch together to be able to create a perfectly comprehensive setting. So, until next time, stay waspinated.